We're going to be looking, our series today is going to be coming from the book of the Ruth. Ruth is not someone that many are not familiar with. She's not a character in the book in the Bible that people are familiar with because it's a small book in the Old Testament. But it's a book that's very significant. And we're going to be looking at a character within the book of Ruth who stands out as a great example of a mother. And as I look at it, I think even just from a personal perspective of a great example of a mother, as I think of my wife to my boys. And I think of her as someone that is a very kind person to our boys. I think of someone who is very wise, someone who is compromising when she needs to be compromising, and one who is a great example for my boys to see as a godly mother. And so for me, that's a wonderful example, I think, at least my boys have, of what a godly mother is. And so I think today, we're going to be looking at an example today of what a godly mother is. We're going to be looking at the example of Naomi. And Naomi, again, is in the book of Ruth, which is not maybe a popular or a well-known book, but we're going to be looking at Naomi, who was maybe even is not even well-known to many folks, but is a wonderful example of a godly mother and grandmother as well. We're going to see today how with Naomi, she was a great example of a godly mother to Ruth, her daughter-in-law. And we don't look at it from that perspective, but she really was. One who knew her God, one who had gone through so much, yet remained faithful to her God. She was kind, unselfish, and wise. And then in the end, God allowed her to experience great privileges and blessings. And I think that Naomi proved a great example for Ruth, as we're going to go see. And we're going to look at three specific points. One is that Naomi, a mother who knew God and remained faithful. Naomi, a mother of character and wisdom. And then Naomi, a mother blessed of God. So we see that these are great examples of certain character qualities that Naomi had expressed that we're going to look at today. First, Naomi, a mother who knew God and remained faithful. And we're going to be looking at Ruth chapter 1, and we're going to be looking at verses 8, 9, and 16. 8, 9, and 16 of chapter 1. Naomi, a mother who knew God and remained faithful. Let's look at verses 8 and 9. May the Lord, in verse 8 and 9 it says, may the Lord, indicates that she had a relationship with the Lord. She knew him in a certain sense. Let's look at verses 8 and 9. It says, in Ruth chapter 1, it says, and Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, go return, each of you, to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. And then verse 9, may the Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And it says, may the Lord in verses 8, and may the Lord in verse 9. And so what she was saying was there that she knew she had a relationship with God. It indicated that statement right there, may the Lord. In other words, she knew about her God. She had a relationship with her God. She wasn't someone that was a casual follower of God. It indicates that she had a more of a deeper relationship with God. Not just knew about God, but had a relationship where she experienced God. So that's really critically important here. That a godly mother, and the example in Naomi was that she was one who knew God, and God was personal to her. Let's look at some other verses here. Let's look at verse 16. It says here in verse 16 that, but Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." Now look at that. That's really critically important, because Ruth says to her, "Your God and my God." Now what does that tell you? That tells you that Ruth saw in Naomi that Naomi had a relationship with God. She saw that Naomi's relationship with God was a real relationship. It says, "your God," indicating a personal relationship with Him. It wasn't just something that she went through the motions. Well, I'm a good Jewish person, and so I'm just going to go do my religious thing. No, it wasn't about a religious thing. It was about a relationship that she had with God. And that was something that Ruth had observed in her, that it was a personal relationship with God. And that's such a great example of what mothers can do for their children. A godly mother will show that their relationship with God is real. They'll show that their relationship with God is something that's just not that you do on Sunday mornings, as something that you just go through the motions on Sunday morning just to go to church for the sake of going to church. No, what they'll observe is that your relationship is something that's living, that's vibrant, that's real, that goes on throughout the week, where you communicate with God, and you communicate and have a relationship with God, and that relationship with Him is real, and the children see that. Often and many times, kids grow up in homes where the relationship of the parents, even though they may say that they're Christians, even though they may say they go to church, they don't always live up to the relationship of where God is real in the home. Where there's a living, vibrant relationship that the parents have, and in this case where the mother has with God. And the children see that. Children are very observant. Children are very astute, and they see what goes on in the home. And they see they see if someone's real or not. They can see if someone's really has a real relationship with God or not. Kids can see that. And depending on if that relationship is real or not, it oftentimes the children will go the way of what they see. If they see that the parents' relationship, or in this case the mother's relationship, isn't real with God, they're not going to go and follow God when they get older. It's not going to be real to them. But chances are, if a parent's relationship is genuine before God and they're genuinely following God, the child's going to follow God as well. And so that's a really important, great example. And Ruth saw that, because Ruth says, "Your God," and then what was Ruth saying? Said, "My God." So she was saying what she saw in Naomi as her mother-in-law, she was going to take for herself. Saying, "Yeah, this is something that's real, this is something that I want." A godly mother will show that she has a genuine relationship with God. The one that's living and real. And let's go on here. It says, and then it says, "In spite of all that Naomi went through, she remained faithful to God." Now Naomi lost her two sons. Naomi lost her husband, and she lost her two sons. But in spite of that, she remained faithful to God. She remained faithful to her God. Yes, she was sad. We see times in here where she was sad in her soul because she told folks, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for that means bitter." In other words, she had experienced sorrow and suffering in her life. But yet, in spite of her sorrow and her suffering, she remained faithful to God. And Naomi saw that. I mean, Ruth saw that in her mother-in-law, Naomi. And that was a strong point. And Naomi didn't, I'm not saying that Naomi maybe didn't understand everything that was going on at the time. She didn't. But in reality, but at the same time, she still trusted God, and she still remained faithful to God. And that's such an important example to follow. Let's go on here. It says, Naomi, a mother of character and wisdom. And we're going to be looking at Ruth chapter 1, verses 6 through 9, and 18, chapter 2, verses 19 to 23, and then chapter 3, verses 16 through 18. Naomi, a mother of character and wisdom. Chapter 1, verses 6 through 9. Naomi shows kindness and unselfishness to her daughter-in-laws. Let's look at this. Let's look at verses 6 through 9 here of chapter 1. Then she arose with her daughter-in-laws that she might return from the land of Moab, for she had heard that the land of Moab, that the Lord had visited her people in giving them food. So she departed from the place where she was, and her 2 daughter-in-laws with her, and they went on their way to return to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her daughter-in-laws, Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with me and the dead. Have you dealt with the dead and me? May the Lord grant that you may find rest each in the house of your husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. Now, Naomi could have said that here they were in the land of Moab, and their 2 daughter-in-laws were Moabites, because that's where their son, when they came to Moab from Bethlehem, they came and they settled there because there was food there. And then her husband passed away, and then the sons married. They married Ruth and Orpah, and then her sons passed away. So Orpah and Ruth were left. And so now they found out there's food back in Bethlehem, and so the Lord's telling them, well, you need to go back, let's go back to Bethlehem. And the daughter-in-laws, Naomi was saying, you need to go back, it would be best for you to go back to your own people. Isn't that what you want? I don't have anything left. Here I am, I'm a widow, as you are, but you have your people. So go back to your people. And so what she was doing there was she was giving them, she was showing kindness to them and allowing them to go back to her own people. So it was an act of kindness. It was an act of unselfishness that she was letting them go. She could have held on to them and said, "No, you're coming with me." No, but she didn't. What she did was that she said, "You can go back to your people." She was freeing them up. She wasn't holding them under bondage. She wasn't holding them under guilt. But she was freeing them up to be able to go back to her people. And that was an act of kindness and an act of unselfishness. And moms are just like that. And is that godly moms are kind moms. And I think about that, and I think that what a blessing that is. And I think again, my wife as an example of being kind to our children, and being kind and unselfish towards our children. And that's a wonderful characteristic and a wonderful blessing. For me, it is. As I see that, my kids benefit from that. And I think and kids see that. Kids know when you're kind. Kids know when you're unselfish, when you're giving of yourself for them. And that's such a wonderful character quality, the wonderful trait that the kids need to see. Because sometimes, moms can be just downright ornery sometimes. And sometimes out of frustration and anger, but being having that kind spirit and having that unselfish spirit really says a lot to the children. It really does. And it goes on here, and that was a great example of Ruth. As Ruth sees this, it was a great example for both of them. When Ruth sees this and says, "Wow, she really wants the best for me." But Naomi said, Ruth said, "No, I want to go with you. I want to be with you." And that was really important. And if you look at verse 18, this is really important too. This is really, really critically important. It says, when she saw that she was determined to go with her, this is Ruth, because Naomi was saying, no, you go with your people, but Ruth was determined to go. And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. In other words, she was compromising. She wasn't going to force the issue, saying, no, you just need to go back to your people. No, you just need to go. She was compromising. She understood. She understood the situation. Okay, I need to compromise here. Compromising in a good sense. Compromise is always good. Compromising too much can be a little dangerous, but at the same time, a good compromise can really be helpful, can go a long way. And so in this case, it proved to be a real blessing. And so her character of being able to negotiate and be able to have compromise was a real blessing to see that. It was a real blessing to see that. To be able to compromise in a situation. And I'm learning that a lot from my wife and my kids as well. Is that I'm not always a good compromiser. I'm usually black and white in what I do. You know, and that's just the way my character is. But I've learned a lot the way my wife deals with our boys, and sometimes learning sometimes you have to be compromising and understand. And that's a great character quality. And it's something that I'm learning as a dad that I didn't always know about, but that's something that's really good. But let's go on here, and this verses 19. Naomi was wise. She knew what to do at the time that would be beneficial for all. And I'm going to look at a couple examples here, verses chapter 2, verses 19 to 23, and chapter 3, verses 16 through 18. Let's look at those. Chapter 2, 19 through 22. It says, her mother-in-law then said to her, where did you glean today, and where did you work? May he who took notice of you be blessed. So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, the name of the boy, the man whom I work today is Boaz. So Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, may he be blessed of the Lord, who has not withdrawn his kindness to the living and to the dead. Again Naomi said to her, the man is our relative, he is one of our closest relatives. Then Ruth the Moabitess said, furthermore, he said to me, you should stay close to my servants until they have finished all my harvest. Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that you go out with her maids, so that the others do not fall upon you in the field. So they stayed close by the maid of Boaz in order to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law. And let's look at chapter 3, verses 16 to 18. It says, when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, how did it go, my daughter? And she told her all that the man had done for her. She said, these 6 measures of barley he gave to me, for he said, do not go to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Then she said, wait, my daughter, until you know how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest until he has settled it today. Now, how did Naomi react? How did she respond when Ruth was put in a situation when she realized that Boaz was going to be Ruth was going to work in Boaz's field? She responded with wisdom. She told Ruth what to do and how to do it, but in a wise sense. In other words, she gave her wise advice. And wise moms give their children wise advice. They tell them in a situation, well, I don't know what to do. A godly mom, what will do is that they will give they'll give good advice in situations and circumstances that will help guide the children, will help guide them to do what's best and what's good. And that's what Naomi did there. And so a wise mom will do that. And so that's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful example of, a godly mother. And again, I refer back to my wife. She's such a wise woman with our boys. She really, really is. And guiding them and helping them through tough, difficult circumstances as kids go through. And this is really important. She knew what to do at the time that would be beneficial for all, and that's so important. A wise mom knows what to do at the time. able to explain it and guide the children through whatever circumstances they're going through. And then Ruth, and our last point is that Naomi is a mother blessed of God. This blessed my heart immensely. This blessed me tremendously when God showed me this. It says, this is Naomi chapter 4, verses 13 to 17. Let's go ahead and look at that. It says, so Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went into her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. Then the woman said to Naomi, blessed is the Lord, who has not left you without a redeemer today, and may his name become famous in Israel. May he also be to you as a restorer of life and a sustainer of your old age. And your daughter-in-law, who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him. Then Naomi took the child and laid him in her lap and became his nurse. Now, verse 13, Naomi is able to see her daughter-in-law Ruth married. What a wonderful blessing that is. Here she had lost her son, and now she has Ruth as her daughter-in-law. And Naomi had lost probably, the greatest people in her life, her husband and then her children. And now God has blessed her immensely by seeing her daughter-in-law be able to get married. What a privilege and what a blessing that is. You think about that. As a mom, for all that she had gone through, as a mother, God allowed her experience the marriage of her daughter-in-law to Boaz, who was a good man, who was a godly man, who feared God. And that's a wonderful blessing. Now look at this again. It says in verses 13 and 15, Naomi got to see her grandson. Not only did she get to see her daughter-in-law married, but she got to see her grandson. What a blessing that is. She had these were taken, but God had allowed her the privilege of seeing her daughter get married, and now allowing her to see her grandson. What a wonderful blessing that is. Can you imagine that? Allowing God to be able to experience it after all she went through, and her remaining faithful to God. God allowed her to experience wonderful blessings. And then also, it says, Naomi had the privilege to care, you look at verse 16, Naomi had the privilege to care for her grandchild. Not only did she get her daughter-in-law married, not only did she have a grandchild, but she got the privilege of what? Caring for her grandchild. And Naomi was sort of like, well, she helped take care of Obed. What a wonderful blessing that is. And godly moms love their kids. They do. And so here she has a new grandchild. Can you imagine how ecstatic she was? What a blessing that was for her to be able to experience that? Wow, this is great. What a wonderful blessing. And then lastly, and she didn't even realize it at the time, and this is a wonderful blessing that we can look at, that people will look back at her, is that Naomi became the great grandparent to the Messiah. Think about that. What a privilege. She didn't even realize what was going to happen. But she was a great grandmother to David. And who was David? And whose line was Jesus in? David. Messiah. What a privilege it is. People don't look at that as a privilege and a blessing. Could you imagine that? Would you ever dream that in the wildest imagination, having the privilege of being the ancestor, how many, like thousands of years prior to, maybe 1,000 years prior to Jesus, the birth of the Messiah? Think about that. What a wonderful privilege that is. Now, I think about all of us, all those are moms, and even just us as believers in Christ, is that we don't realize what kind of example we have in the lives of those who follow us. Moms with us, children, and just even us as individuals. The influence that we have. People know, as godly moms, kids know if our relationship with God is real or not. So one of the things that God's calling us, even as moms and as individuals in Christ, is to have a genuine relationship with God. In other words, where God is real in our lives. It's not just something on Sunday mornings, but it's something that's real, where you know you're God. Because if you know you're God and others are following you and seeing you, they're going to say, well, I want that for me too. Just like Ruth did. If they see that you're kind, if they see that you're unselfish, and displaying godly character, they're going to want that. People are going to want that. He's a kind person. He's a giving person, an unselfish person. Kids are going to see that. And if they see that you're wise, what's going to happen? They're going to want to come to you for what? Advice. They're going to want to come to you for wisdom. They're going to want to come to you. Because they see what you have is real. And then ultimately, in the end, even though sometimes there may be trials, there may be difficulties, there may be things in life, and you come through those trials and those difficulties, and you remain faithful to God, people are going to see that too, even in the midst of that. And they're going to say, wow, they came through that, so can I. And that's what I want. I mean, and a child or the person that's following it is going to say, that's what I want. Because it's real. It's living. And I think for all of us today, is that I would just challenge us to be the best moms that we can be for those of us who are moms, even if our kids are grown up, because they're still watching. And be, as believers in Christ, be the best believers that we can be. To be the kind people, to be the ones that are giving of themselves, that are wise, that are faithful to their God, that their relationship with God is real. And allow God just to do that in such in a supernatural and powerful way. Amen? Because that's what really is going to change lives. That's what people are really going to see. That's what our kids are going to see. And those who follow after us. We leave a godly legacy, don't we? When we follow the example of Christ. And we follow His character as moms and as godly people who know their God. Amen?